Hello and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. Today we are going to continue in our story, A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. And we are going to continue in chapter 4. And in the last video, Ove was driving to the shopping mall. So here we go. As Ove approached the shopping center from his little side road, he could just make out that there were only 2 parking spaces left. With all these people, what all these people were doing at the shopping center on a normal weekday was beyond his comprehension. Obviously, people no longer had jobs to go to. Ove's wife usually starts sighing as soon as they even get close to a parking lot like this. Ove wants to park close to the entrance, as if there's a competition about who can find the best parking spot, she always says, as he completes circuit after circuit and swears at all the imbeciles getting in his way in their foreign cars. Sometimes they end up doing 6 or 7 loops before they find a good spot. And if Ove, in the end, has to concede defeat and content himself with a slot 20 yards further away, he's in a bad mood for the rest of the day. His wife has never understood it. Then again, she never was very good at grasping questions of principle. Ove figured he would go around slowly a couple of times just to check the lay of the land, but then suddenly caught sight of the Mercedes. Do you remember the Mercedes from the beginning of the other chapter? Oh yeah. He caught sight of the Mercedes thundering along the main road towards the shopping center. So this was where he'd been heading, that suit with plastic cables in his ears. Ove didn't hesitate for a second. He put his foot down and barged his way out of the intersection into the road. The Mercedes slammed on its brakes, firmly pressing down on the horn and following close behind. The race was on. The signs at the parking lot entrance led the traffic to the right. But when they got there, the Mercedes must also have seen the 2 empty slots, because he tried to slip past Ove on the left. Ove only just managed to maneuver himself in front of him to block his path. The 2 men started hunting each other across the tarmac. In his rear view mirror, Ove saw a little Toyota turn off the road behind them, following the road signs, and enter the parking area in a wide loop from the right. Ove's eyes followed it while he hurtled forward in the opposite direction with the Mercedes on his tail. Of course, he could have taken one of the free slots, the one closest to the entrance, and then had the kindness of letting the Mercedes take the other. But what sort of victory would that have been? Instead, Ove made an emergency stop in front of the first slot and stayed where he was. The Mercedes started wildly sounding its horn. Ove didn't flinch. The little Toyota approached from the far right. The Mercedes also caught sight of it and, too late, understood Ove's devilish plan. Its horn wailed furiously as it tried to push past the Saab, but it never stood a chance. Ove had already waved the Toyota into one of the free slots. Only once it was safely in did Ove nonchalantly swing into the other space. The side window of the Mercedes was so covered in saliva that when it drove past, that Ove couldn't even see the driver. He stepped out of the Saab triumphantly, like a gladiator who had just slain his opponent. Then he looked at the Toyota. "Oh, damn," he mumbled, irritated. The car door was thrown open. "Hi there!" the lanky one sang merrily as he untangled himself from the driver's seat. "Hello, hello," said his wife from the other side of the Toyota, lifting out their 3-year-old. Ove watched repentantly as the Mercedes disappeared in the distance. "Thanks for the parking space. Bloody marvelous." The lanky one was beaming. Ove didn't reply. "What's your name?" the 3-year-old burst out. "Ove," said Ove. "My name's Nassanine," she said with delight. Ove nodded at her. "And I'm Pat," the lanky one started saying, but Ove had already turned around and left. "Thanks for the space," the pregnant foreign woman called after him. Ove could hear laughter in her voice. He didn't like it. He just muttered a quick, "Fine, fine," without turning, and marched through the revolving doors into the shopping center. He turned left down the first corridor and looked around several times, as if afraid that the family from next door would follow him, but then turned right and disappeared. Ove stopped suspiciously outside the supermarket and eyed the poster advertising the week's special offers. Not that Ove was intending to buy any ham in this particular shop, but it was always worth keeping an eye on the prices. If there's one thing in this world that Ove dislikes, it's when someone tries to trick him. Ove's wife sometimes jokes that the 3 worst words Ove knows in his life are "batteries not included." People usually laugh when she says that, but Ove does not usually laugh. He moved on from the supermarket and stepped into the florist, and there it didn't take long for a rumble to start up, as Ove's wife would have described it, or a discussion, as Ove always insisted on calling it. Ove put down a coupon on the counter on which it said 2 plants for 50 kronor. Given that Ove only wanted 1 plant, he explained to the shop assistant, with all rhyme and reason on his side, that he should be able to buy it for 25 kronor, because that was half of 50. However, the assistant, a brain-dead, phone-texting 19-year-old, would not go along with it. She maintained that a single flower would cost 39 kronor, and 2 for 50 only applied if one bought 2. The manager had to be summoned. It took Ove 15 minutes to make him see sense and agree that Ove was right. Or, to be honest about it, the manager mumbled something that sounded a little like "bloody old sod" into his hand and hammered 25 kronor so hard into the cash register that anyone would have thought it was the machine's fault. It made no difference to Ove. He knew these retailers were always trying to screw you out of money, and no one screwed Ove and got away with it. Ove put his debit card on the counter. The manager allowed himself the slightest of smiles, then nodded dismissively and pointed at the sign that read credit card purchases of less than 50 kronar carried a surcharge of 3 kronar. Now Ove is standing in front of his wife with 2 plants because it was a question of principle. There was no way I was going to pay 3 kronar, rails Ove, as his eyes looking down into the gravel. Ove's wife often quarrels with Ove because he's always arguing about everything. But Ove isn't bloody arguing. He just thinks right is right. Is that such an unreasonable attitude to life? He raises his eyes and looks at her. I suppose you're annoyed, and I didn't come yesterday like I promised, he mumbles. She doesn't say anything. The whole street is turning into a madhouse, he says defensively. Complete chaos. You even have to go out and back up their trailers for them nowadays. And you can't even put a hook up in peace. He continues, as if she's disagreeing. He clears his throat. Obviously, I couldn't put the hook up when it was dark outside. If you do that, there's no telling when the lights go off. More likely, they'll stay on and consume electricity. Out of the question. She doesn't answer. He kicks the frozen ground, sort of looking for words, clears his throat briefly once again. Nothing works when you're not at home. She doesn't answer. Ove fingers the plants. I'm tired of it, just rattling around the house all day while you're away. She doesn't answer that either. He nods, holds up the plants so she can see them. They're pink, the ones you like. They said in the shop they're perennials, but that's not what they're bloody called. Apparently, they die in this kind of cold, so they also said that in the shop, but only so they could sell me a load of other stuff. He looks as if he's waiting for her approval. The new neighbors put saffron in their rice and things like that. They're foreigners, he says in a low voice. A new silence. He stands there, slowly twisting the wedding ring on his finger, as if looking for something else to say. He still finds it painfully difficult being the one to take charge of a conversation. That was always something she took care of. He usually just answered. This is a new situation for them both. Finally, Ove squats, digs up the plant he brought last week, and carefully puts it in a plastic bag. He turns the frozen soil carefully before putting in the new plants. They've bumped up the electricity prices again, he informs her as he gets to his feet. He looks at her for a long time. Finally, he puts his hand carefully on the big boulder and caresses it tenderly from side to side, as if touching her cheek. I miss you, he whispers. It's been 6 months since she died. But Ove still inspects the whole house twice a day to feel the radiators and check that she hasn't sneakily turned up the heating. That's the end of chapter 4. So every chapter we learn a little bit more about a man called Ove. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today for Mrs. Pam Reads. Let me come around here. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and when you do, you'll see that little bell tab. You want to click that, and they will send you an update when a new video is posted. All right, you guys, thanks for joining me for the conclusion of chapter 4, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.